Hey everyone! First off, thanks to everybody for all their positive feedback from the last video that I posted. I'm really excited to be talking about both my new campaign and Keys from the Golden Vault, which is, I think, going to be a lot of fun and has a lot of opportunity for homebrew. And I did say on that video that content for both of these streams would be starting pretty soon here. And so I'm going to start with my kind of general overview of homebrewing with Keys from the Golden Vault. I have a couple of takeaways from just kind of conceptually how to go ahead and use these missions, but also drawn specifically from the introduction chapter. So I'm going to go through those. I have 5 takeaways that I want to touch on. So the first one is in the using these adventures section, and specifically with the emphasis that's there on planning these heist missions and the role play aspect, right? So this section's pretty brief, but storytellers out there, really, you should be able to milk this for a lot of time and energy at the table. And I think that there are a couple of tools that you can go ahead and break out to do that. The first one would be that I think you should look at this planning session as an opportunity to use the inspiration mechanic in D&D 5. So we talk on the show a lot about Star Trek Adventures, and in Star Trek Adventures, the pull between the threat and momentum metacurrencies is really where the magic of that system lies. If you can use inspiration in the same way, what you're going to find is that your players are going to be more invested in their roleplay because they feel like as you can kind of steer them through, or even just reward them for their creativity, reward them for rolling really well on any of those checks, or for rolling really poorly and having to learn some things, that's going to inspire them to kind of keep going. That's the purpose of inspiration, right? Is to inspire. So that would be the first thing that I would say. The second thing is that just in general, it's a really great opportunity to get them rolling in a way other than combat, right? We know that they're going to be, when they're fighting things and they swing their sword or whatever, that they're going to be rolling there. Let's get them rolling on some of their ribbon abilities and their soft skills about how to go ahead and do the planning. Maybe something that the player doesn't understand and the character doesn't understand, knowledge checks and stuff like that can help them get through it. So that's going to be a really great opportunity to get them rolling outside of combat. And then the last thing I would say is, and this is again kind of more of like a storytelling tactic and less of kind of a rules as written tactic, but if they find a particularly great avenue or a particularly great idea, or even if they have kind of a particularly great role on one aspect or another, make sure that you use that to reward them with advantage on checks that happen later in the adventure, right? So if there's a situation that comes up that's related to something that they rolled really well on the planning stage, or in the planning they're saying, hey, we should watch out for these kinds of things, and then they encounter them, advantage is always something as a storyteller that you should feel free to give out on any particular role. So be keeping track of the way that the planning sessions are going and how they go ahead and use that. So that would be thing one, is emphasis on the planning and role playing. Thing two that I would talk about is how to think about pairing these missions together instead of just using them as kind of singleton missions on their own. Any sort of a side quest or kind of bubble of plot that's going to exist off of your normal timeline is always better when it is multiple sessions and things that are strung along together. So be thinking about either 2 different missions that could be a part 1 and a part 2 of a bigger mission, or maybe something that happens when you solve the first mission creates the scenario that you see in the second mission, or another option would be that you solve something in the first mission and then it reveals the mystery that is in the second mission. Tie these things together and build a bigger plot based on the building blocks that were given here. Remember that NPCs are a gift, and anytime one gets exposed to the game, it is always available to you as a storyteller to bring back for some other reason. And bringing those characters back from the player's past and from the game past will make those sessions so rewarding. Your players will love the callback, and it's a pre-written character that you don't have to worry about reinventing. So, always remember to use your NPCs. Number 3 has to do with character alignment, and the bit in the introduction that specifically talks about the use of the Golden Vault as an organization, as a quest-giving organization within the game. So if your players are good aligned, then the Golden Vault is going to be very, very important, because that's kind of the leverage-esque organization that they're going to be getting all these missions from. And they're the ones that sort of hold the keys about why these missions are not acts of bad thing, right? So that's, if they're good aligned, that's going to be very, very important. If your characters are the least bit gray, these heists are much easier to go ahead and plot in there because there are any number of nefarious or slightly nefarious purposes that the characters could be going on them. So use that to your advantage also. Remember that when we get into the missions themselves, though, I will say that sometimes the plot hooks that the Golden Vault gives you are better than others. So be watching for that. And I'll have some tips and tricks if they're not particularly strong. I'll have some tips and tricks on how to go ahead and make them a little bit stronger when we get to the individual ones. Number 4 is going to be rival teams. Rival teams are a fantastic concept that was introduced to D&D 5 really in Call of the Netherdeep. They've kind of existed before in sort of like, we saw them in Tomb of Annihilation, that kind of thing, but really they came to their own in Call of the Netherdeep. They are specified in fantastic detail in this book, and so I would really study that up and get to know it. A rival team providing a ticking clock sort of pressure to your campaign will really reap benefits. So absolutely use that to your advantage. We're going to be doing an entire episode about rivals and everything. So, be aware that that's coming on the channel. But yeah, read up on that, study it, know it well. Last thing that I would say is that in general, for the missions in the book, the maps, the places, the scenarios, and the NPCs are great, and feel free to lift them and use them in your adventure exactly as they are. If you need a creepy mansion, there's a creepy mansion here. If you need a museum, there's a museum here. If you need a casino, there's a casino here, right? There are all these great kind of singleton locations that if you just need a little bit of flavor in your campaign for a particular reason, lift them and shift them, grab them exactly as they are. Now, that being said, one of the things that I think is kind of overused in this is the trope about you meet an NPC quest giver, and that NPC quest giver has kind of an inexact and not great copy of the map to the place that you're going to go. What I think that causes is kind of a red herring situation, because while these NPCs to us as storytellers are all distinct, these NPCs are not distinct to the players because one person is constantly delivering them. It's always the storyteller that's delivering them. So if I'm a player and 3 NPCs have given me a map that inevitably gets me into trouble because it's not good enough, I am never going to trust any NPCs to give me a map ever. So just be aware of kind of the can of worms that you open if you're using that kind of exactly. And again, when we go through the individual missions, I will talk about sometimes when that works and sometimes when that doesn't work as effectively and things that you should be watching for on that. So anyway, that's my general take on the overview and the introduction of Keys from the Golden Vault. I'll be back next time to go ahead and talk about the first mission. So really excited to be talking that. What tips and tricks do you find? How do you think you're going to be using this material in your campaigns? Excited to hear it. Leave it in the comment down below. Thanks.